Hi, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to talk about if clauses type 2. Now, before we start, let's look at one very important word when we talk about if clauses type 2, because we need it all the time. It's the word would. Would means würde. So the sentence part, I would go mountain biking, is ich würde Mountainbiken gehen. It is important to note that would can be shortened to apostrophe D in spoken English. So the sentence I would go mountain biking can be shortened to I'd go mountain biking, but it means exactly the same. But now let's go ahead. And of course, we start with the question, when do we use if clauses type 2? If the weather was good tomorrow, I would go mountain biking, is a good example sentence. It translates as, wenn das Wetter morgen gut wäre, würde ich Mountainbiken gehen. Now, I'm sure some of you have already noticed that just like in if clauses type 1, we have a condition, eine Voraussetzung, and a consequence, eine Konsequenz. The real big difference, and the only big difference, is that the condition is very unlikely to happen. Das Eintreten ist sehr unwahrscheinlich. And of course, the consequence, therefore, is also unlikely to happen. So we can formulate the following sentence. We use if clauses type 2 to express that one thing is an unlikely requirement for another thing to happen. Wir benutzen if clauses type 2, auszudrücken, dass eine Sache die unwahrscheinliche Voraussetzung für eine andere Sache, also eine Konsequenz, ist. Now, let's move on to our next question. How do we form if clauses type 2? We're going to need a slightly bigger table for that. Let's go! Now, as we have already established, if clauses type 2 consist of the condition and the consequence. And just like with if clauses type 1, the condition is always a subordinate clause, ein Nebensatz, and the consequence is always the main clause, der Hauptsatz. If the weather was good tomorrow is our condition and subordinate clause. I would go mountain biking is the consequence and therefore the main clause. So here we see if and was in the condition or the subordinate clause. That means we can formulate, to form an if clause type 2, we use if plus simple past in the subordinate clause. If clauses Typ 2 zu bilden, benutzen wir if und simple past im Nebensatz. And for the consequence, the main clause, we see would, go, which is the word would plus the infinitive. So we can formulate and would plus infinitive in the main clause und would plus infinitiv im Hauptsatz. Now, one more important thing is that the consequence can also stand at the beginning of the sentence. You may have a déjà vu here. So, if the weather was good tomorrow, comma, I would go mountain biking, can be turned to I'd go mountain biking, meaning I would go mountain biking, no comma, if the weather was good tomorrow. And once more here, helping us to form correct if clauses type 2 is Swabian Bart Simpson. In order to know which tense or which words we use in which sentence part, we have to figure out which part is the main clause and the subordinate clause, or the condition and the consequence. Or, as Bart would phrase it in this case, I'd go mountain biking würde ich Mountainbiken gehen. Das ist ganz klar die Konsequenz von was anderem. Also der Hauptsatz. Also brauche ich da ganz gewiss would plus infinitive. And on the other side, if the weather was good tomorrow, wenn das Wetter morgen gut wäre. Das ist ganz klar die Bedingung, also der Nebensatz. Und dann ist jedem direkt klar, da brauche ich if plus simple past. Now at the end of this video, here's a comparison between if clauses type 1 and type 2. The main difference is the meaning, die Bedeutung. Das Eintreten eines if clauses type 2 ist sehr unwahrscheinlich. Das heißt, wenn ihr über etwas reden wollt, was sehr unwahrscheinlich nur passiert, dann benötigt ihr simple past und would plus infinitive. Wenn ihr aber über etwas redet, das sehr wahrscheinlich oder im Bereich des Gutmöglichen liegt, dann benutzt if clauses Typ 1 und demzufolge simple present und will future. To keep the important parts of this video in mind, I think it's a good idea to copy this table right here. And if you need any of the other red boxes or tables of the previous pages, into your exercise book. Now, that's the end of the video. If you didn't understand something, go back and maybe turn the subtitles on. I hope that you've all learned something today, and because you watched the video till the end, here's a little treat.